Ledges by Ninjago15. Narrated by DodgeThis82 and Sonic Foxprower. I saw a man standing on the side of a bridge, so I ran to help him. I was doing what everybody should, helping someone who was in trouble. I talked to him slowly, letting him calm himself down. His name was Nick. He wasn't very attractive, but he certainly wasn't as ugly as he insisted.
I'm tired of seeing all these people around me with a purpose,
he explained.
Everyone's running around, getting married, advancing in careers, raising kids, and I'm just alone. Closed off. It's my own fault. I've always been like that. I just assumed something would change.
He trailed off, so I squeezed his hand.
I thought I'd do more with my life besides wait for it to be over.
I nodded. I told him I knew that feeling of wandering through life with no purpose or goals. Not feeling like you belong anywhere you go. Never feeling like you were understood by anyone around you.
What if I die without anybody having ever truly understood me?
Nick asked. I told him I didn't know. I didn't understand him either, but I was starting to. I told him such. Even explaining how I was a random stranger and my advice shouldn't be taken as gospel, he seemed to appreciate my honesty, even when I was blunt. I told him life had more bad days than good. It was up to us to find our own purpose, our own reason for waking up every morning, especially when all the reasons other people have hold no excitement or place for people like us. He smiled, showing me that everything was going to be okay with him from then on. He looked lighter, full of hope, ready for whatever the world could throw at him.
Thank you for caring, for stopping to talk to me. Most people would have just kept walking or called the police.
I grabbed him in a tight hug as he began to sob. He was a short guy, but a little heavy. It took a lot for me to wrap my arms around his whole chest. I felt his tears hit my shoulder before I pushed him backwards off the bridge and into the dark water below. What? It's no fun if they already want to die. Nobody Wants to Go Near Me Anymore by Polly Ann. People used to like me. They'd sit next to me on a park bench. They'd smile when they saw me. They were completely comfortable bringing their girlfriends and kids around me. Not anymore. Not since that awful murder. Now they cross the street to avoid me, and if they do look at me, it's only with a look of disgust. I wish I could tell them all how sorry I was. Sure, nobody blames me. It's not my fault. They know it wasn't my fault, but now they can't stand to even glance my way. I'm so lonely. What I wouldn't give to have someone sit down for lunch with me. I took the little things like that for granted for so long. I had to watch him die. They hanged him and left before he was even dead. I was the one that saw the life leave his eyes, saw the pain and desperation on his face, and I couldn't do a thing to help him. those terrified eyes will haunt me for the rest of my life. I wanted nothing more than to reach out and save him, point the police to the murderers, and see those awful men put in jail for the rest of their lives. But I couldn't. I'll never be able to. I can't control where my branches bend, and my leaves can only rustle and whisper in the wind. Flight of a One-Winged Butterfly by Reddit user Cal Ness. Narrated by Dodge82 and The Devil's Interval. Tell me what you remember about the Keeper. I shifted uncomfortably in my seat. Pain shot through my broken arm. I only recalled bits and pieces of my encounter. The ungodly strength of the Keeper's hands. The smoky, tic-tac smell of his breath. The faraway look in his eyes. As though he lived in another plane of existence. Do you have any questions specifically? The detective's name was Miller. Her male colleagues took a wide berth around her. She was hardened. The last person in the whole station you'd want to meet in a dark alley. My style is a bit unorthodox, Miller said. I like to listen, to let you tell it and not get in the way. Will that work for you? The events of the past week were blurry. I recalled little gray vignettes, slivers of memory penned through a full-scale blackout. After I escaped, the doctor who examined me said the muddiness of things had to do with the belladonna, which we were force-fed in our captivity. But I had to remember as much as I could. I owed it to the girls I'd left behind. If reliving the story stopped even one more girl from dying, it was worth it. We're trying to create a physical profile, Miller said. Why don't you start by telling me what the Keeper looked like? I took a deep breath. And let myself go back to the first thing I remembered. Seeing a huge man standing behind me in the reflection of my bedroom mirror. It had been a Wednesday night, a few hours before he abducted me and took me to the butterfly house. I'd come home from the late shift at the restaurant, wanting nothing more than to take a shower and rinse off the day. But once I walked into my bedroom, I noticed that things looked touched. For one, there was a small duffel bag sitting by the door. Then I saw my drawers and closet door were open, with various clothes strewn about the room. The Keeper packed a bag for all the girls, one of his signatures. Enough clothes to make us comfortable during our week-long metamorphosis, before we were reborn. When I saw him in the mirror, standing behind me, the first thing I noticed was how big he was. He was built like a gorilla, 6.5 feet tall, close to 300 pounds. He had a massive, distended gut, swollen from what I guessed was years of too much drinking. But he moved fast. As soon as I saw the mask he wore, vintage black aviation goggles and a plain black face covering, he pounced. He covered my mouth with a chloroform-soaked rag, and I slipped into a dreamless state. I woke up in a small, concrete-floored room with the worst headache I'd ever had. There were 2 other girls in the room. I noticed how much we looked alike. Dark brown hair, fair skin, below average height. All of us around 5'3". We were the keeper's preferred type. All the girls he kept in the butterfly house looked familiar. The other girls were awake, their eyes full of terror. Who are you? I asked. My name is Claire, said one. Then the other. I'm Jessa. The room was windowless. Its walls were painted bright robin's egg blue. Each of us had a metal cot and a plastic bin for our clothes, which had been neatly folded inside. The duffels that the keeper had used to pack for us were gone. The room was otherwise free from furniture except for a large metal chair. A minute later, the door opened. The keeper walked in, pushing a cart of food. He left it, then went outside and grabbed a sledgehammer, which he wielded with one arm, given his size. In his other hand, he carried a whiteboard with an expo pen magnetically attached to it. I looked at the food cart. My stomach growled. I was starving, and the food looked delicious. 3 glasses of juice and 3 pieces of pie. The keeper's mask was gone. He had a medium complexion. His face was pockmarked with acne scars. His nose was reddish, covered in a tangled circuitry of veins and exploded blood vessels. His eyes were bright, neon pink thanks to the contacts he wore. He always wore different colors depending on his mood. I also noticed his hair bleached, so blonde that it was almost white. It had been twisted into tight French braids, which clung to his massive skull like albino centipedes. The pigtails hung loosely over his shoulders.
"Hello,"
he said.
"You must be hungry."
He gave each of us a plate. I thought about not eating the food. Every fiber of my instinct told me not to, but seeing that the other girls had already started eating, I did as well. Where are we? Asked Jessa, washing down the pie with a swig of juice.
"The butterfly house,"
said the keeper.
"A sanctuary where insects are reborn."
Insects? He motioned to us with his massive hand, his bratwurst-sized fingers outstretched. Then, he sat down in the metal chair and began drawing on the whiteboard. The drawings were childlike, arranged in a circle with arrows pointing clockwise. He motioned to the top drawing, a misshapen circle labeled egg.
"I'd like to explain your metamorphosis,"
he said.
"You're the egg room, which will be your home for the next few days."
He smiled.
3 insects contained in prisons from which you must be liberated.
The keeper's teeth were stained yellow, some of them rotten. His gums were so receded that I could see the exposed roots.
After 72 hours of fertilization,
He continued,
you'll progress to the larva room. Therein, you'll experience a metamorphic stage involving ample nourishment and physical transformation.
I pushed away the slice of pie and the juice, noticing that Claire and Jessa had done the same. But my equilibrium was already starting to dissolve. I felt woozy, and my head spun.
After larva,
Continued the keeper, delighted in his opportunity to enlighten us.
you'll progress to pupa.
Pupa. I remembered the word from somewhere. High school biology, maybe. Pupa was the cocoon, the chrysalis caterpillars entered before they became butterflies,
And after pupa,
said the keeper.
imago.
He pointed to the final drawing. It looked like a butterfly a little girl might draw, its wings crooked and outstretched at comical angles. But the butterfly drawing looked alive, vibrating with a strange energy. Amidst dizziness and hallucinations, I could see that it was morphing, coming to life,
You are to be reborn,
said the keeper.
a new species, the nightshade butterfly. I'll keep you here, a sanctuary for insects awaiting the realization of a much greater purpose.
The room was beginning to spin. Jessa had started vomiting. Claire had become oddly pale, her head lolling around loosely on the pivot of her neck as she fought for consciousness,
You're to eat a steady diet of nightshade.
said the keeper.
If you're wondering about the physical effects you're experiencing, it's due to the toxins in the berries.
Pie, juice. I'd eaten almost all of it, overcome by hunger,
Atropa belladonna,
said the keeper.
a proper diet for butterflies in the making.
Then I passed out for the second time. I woke up when a drop of liquid splashed into my open eyeball. I tried to blink, but my lids were being forced open by the keeper's strong, calloused fingers. I tried to shift away, but I realized that my arms, legs, and head were strapped down to the cot.
Did you know
Asked the keeper.
that women in Renaissance Italy took belladonna because of the way it made their eyes look? That's where it gets its name from the belladonnas. Optometrists use belladonna for dilation as well, but in much smaller doses.
He smiled. The stale barroom stench of cigarettes and booze rolled out of his mouth, though he tried to mask it with spearmint Tic Tacs. He also wore the pungent, cloying perfume an old woman might wear.
I do love the way it makes my butterfly's eyes look,
He said.
like a doll's.
Please, I said. My parents have lots of money. My dad's a...
Money?
Interrupted the keeper.
What makes you think this is about money?
He pried open my other eye, though I fought as hard as I could to keep it closed. Plunking in another eye drop, he told me about his motive.
Insects have always disgusted me,
He said.
but once I realized I could help them transform into butterflies, my life became meaningful again.
Jessa, Claire, and I discussed trying to escape a dozen times or more, but it was just a pipe dream. Our diet consisted of things infused with belladonna. Its side effects included dilated pupils, blurred vision, loss of balance, hallucinations, and, with enough, delirium and paralysis. I experienced all of it. But eating what the keeper brought us, I had no other choice. If you've never experienced terror and starvation and dehydration all at once, I'll ask you to reserve your judgment. Me and the other girls, the eggs, also talked through the wall to the girls in the second stage, larva. They sounded weary. They told us that once you graduated to the second stage, you were fed only berries, which the keeper scattered across the floor like dog food. One day, Jessa, Claire, and I awoke to the sound of blood-curdling screams coming from the larva room. The girls were pleading for their lives. We heard a massive thumping sound until, eventually, the screaming stopped. When we whispered through the wall that night, we were met with haunting silence. I didn't ever find out why women earned the keeper's hatred. He said he did it out of love, that he wanted to liberate us from our six-legged existence. But given that we all looked the same, I guessed that something had happened in the keeper's disturbed life that gave genesis to his cruelty. We reminded him of his mom, or his sister, or some other woman who had slighted him along the crooked path of his life. After 3 days, the keeper dragged us to the second room. Larva. I wanted to fight back, but didn't have the strength. The room looked almost identical to the first. 3 metal cots, no windows, a plastic bin for our clothes. The keeper had already moved them while we'd been asleep, folding them neatly inside. As opposed to Robin's egg blue, this room was painted a pastel shade of pink. At first, I thought the room's color made the concrete floor look rosy, but after my eyes adjusted, I realized that there were bloodstains in the concrete, and I screamed. That evening, I asked the keeper if he could hand us the nightshade berries instead of scattering them on the floor, but he giggled with sadistic delight, then politely declined my request. Later that night, Jessa, Claire, and I heard the sound of crying from the egg room. More girls. The keeper had brought in his next group of victims. The 3 of us listened as he explained the metamorphic process as he had to us. The girls were crying, complaining about feeling woozy. I wanted to scream through the wall to tell them not to eat what the keeper was giving them, but I couldn't find the physical strength. Eating the berries directly, which I had no choice but to do, amplified the nightshade's toxic effect. Before, I'd been dizzy, discombobulated. Now, vomiting was a regular occurrence. Dehydration and hunger so severe that we had no choice but to scrounge for berries like starving mutts. A night later, Jessa, Claire, and I decided to whisper through the wall, just like the girls who'd been in the larva room before us had done. "What the f*** is he doing to us?" asked one of the girls. "How can we escape? We need to get out of here. We have to find a way." But there was no way out that I could see, and I'd almost given up hope. The most terrifying part was that I didn't hear anything in the next room over, what I assumed was the pupa room. No screams, no whispers, no last futile attempt at brokering human connection through the basement walls before the keeper's plan came to fruition. The one thing I did hear was the occasional muttering of the keeper as he went about his work. But the girls were silent. Late one night, I woke up to the sound of whimpering and another sound. Through bleary, belladonna dilated eyes, I saw the source of the noise. The keeper was standing in the middle of the room, his shirt off, his distended, swollen gut spilling over a tool belt. He was sweating, his face screwed up in determination, but his centipede French braid pigtails hung over his shoulders, undisturbed and neatly tied. Jessa was lying on a thick wooden rack, naked, her arms, legs, and head bound down with leather straps. Stop. Stop. Make it stop. The keeper was using his sledgehammer to pulverize her legs. She was too weak to resist. Even if she'd had her strength, she wouldn't have been able to resist on account of being bound down. From next door, one of the girls whispered through the walls. "What's happening?" She sounded terrified. "He's..." I managed. "She's..." But I couldn't find the words. I was too shocked, too stunned to do anything but watch in horror as the keeper continued maiming Jessa. I looked over to see that Claire was slumped against the wall. Her eyelids were barely open, but I saw that her eyes were crossed lazily. Berry-colored vomit spilled down her chest, which was rising and falling in slow rhythm. She was alive, biologically, but mentally, spiritually, and emotionally, I knew that she was dead. I tried to get her attention anyway. "Claire," I said. "Claire, we have to do something." She was gone. Gone to a place I hoped was less cruel. The steady diet of belladonna had poisoned her. It had ruined her brain. She'd become nothing more than a pitiable larva awaiting the next stage of metamorphosis. After a final, well-aimed swing of his sledge, the keeper nodded to himself. Then he undid the straps binding Jessa's broken legs to the rack. He pulled the staple gun from his belt. He moved Jessa's legs together and began suturing one to the other. Horror welled inside of me as I realized he was creating a caterpillar's tail. Mercifully, Jessa didn't scream. She only continued whimpering. Whatever feeling had once existed in her lower limbs was gone. After a few more minutes, the keeper left the room, his work done for the moment. But he left the door open, thinking that both Claire and I were drugged to the point of no return. I found a sudden measure of strength, courage, something I didn't know existed inside of me, an unquenchable, burning desire to survive. My legs still wobbly, my senses still blurred. I stumbled over to the rack Jessa was bound to. I crashed into its wooden edge, sending a shockwave of pain through my hip. "Please," Jessa sobbed. "Please." My drunken fingers fumbled with the straps binding her arms, weakened from days of malnourishment. The belt claps were heavy, the leather thick and unbending. I dug deep, clenching my fists, returning sensation to my hands. Then I pulled as hard as I could. All the while, I kept one eye on the door. I looked for the keeper, but I also looked at the open portal to freedom. I wanted more than anything to just run, but I couldn't leave Jessa behind. My eyes kept drifting to Jessa's mutilated legs, to her tail. New atrocities distracted me with every passing second. I heard a door close down the hallway. The girls in the egg room began screaming through the wall, asking what was happening, drawing attention. I thought I heard the keeper's heavy, thunderous steps plodding outside, but shook away the thought and returned to helping Jessa. With the straps finally removed after what seemed like an hour, I fell to the berry and blood-slicked ground, exhausted. Jessa slipped off of the rag and hit the ground with a wet smack. Immediately, without hesitation, she began crawling toward the open doorway, her tail making a slithering pattern in her wake. "Help," she sobbed. "Help me. I'll come back for you," I said, stepping past her. "The other girls, I have to save them before he comes back." I stumbled out into the hallway, which I'd never seen until then. We were deep in the bowels of a house, a basement, or a bunker. Something underground and hidden from the world. To my left, the hallway led to a staircase, and to my right, what appeared to be a dead end. I couldn't tell, it was too dark. All I could see was a light revealing a sign over the room next to ours, a hand-painted sign, written in the keeper's childlike scrawl read, "Egg Room." I stumbled to the metal door and checked the knob. Of course it was locked. The girls on the other side approached the door and began yelling at me. "Let us the f*** out! It's locked. Find a key. You have to find a key." They began screaming louder, drawing more attention. I sobbed, fumbling futility with the doorknob. I felt a sudden presence behind me, and instinctually I ducked. The keeper had come back, swinging his sledgehammer at the back of my head. It whistled over the top of my skull so close that my hair floated after the disturbance it had made in the air. It had been swung so forcefully that it tore through the steel door of the egg room like a soda can. With the sledgehammer lodged in the door, afforded precious seconds, I crawled between the keeper's legs, got to my feet, and began running down the hall toward the stairs. When I passed by the larva room, I tripped. Jessa, still slithering across the floor, grabbed at my feet, tripping me. "Please," she moaned. "Please." The keeper had begun plodding down the hallway toward us. He dislodged his sledge. His heavy footfall seemed to shake the foundation of the concrete basement behind him. Breaching through the hole his sledgehammer had torn into the door of the egg room, I saw the girls' bloody hands. They writhed against each other, clogging the hole in the process, grating themselves on the slivers of torn steel. I struggled out of Jessa's grip, crawling on all fours toward the staircase and the light of the first floor, but the keeper was right behind me. I ducked into a dim room on my left. I looked overhead as I went in to see another hand-painted sign, "Pupil Room." Outside, I heard Jessa pleading with the keeper. He yelled at her, kicking her away. But the distraction bought me precious seconds. I stood up, pushing past what felt like heavy bags you'd find in a boxing gym. They were hanging from the ceiling, made of thick black leather with bulging shapes inside. Reaching the back of the room, I looked behind me to see that the keeper had walked through the door.
"You are treading on very thin ice,"
he said. His voice had been replaced with authentic, booming wrath.
"Do not disturb the cocoons, or you'll experience a fate much worse than death."
Cocoons. I studied the one in front of me, and I realized they were body bags suspended from the ceiling with chains. The one I was looking at, its bottom chest level began writhing, a thick liquid like the gelatinous drop that collects on the tip of a soap dispenser in a public restroom, seeping from its base. The liquid was dripping from all of them. It had coated the floor in a sheen of clear jelly. The keeper made his way past the cocoons carefully. This was my opportunity. Disturb the pupa. I was terrified by what I'd find inside, but without stopping to think, I unzipped the body bag in front of me. A vaguely human shape slipped from the cocoon and onto the floor, resting in a flood of clear jelly. The body belonged, I guess, to one of the girls I'd whispered to from the other side of the wall when I was still in the egg room. She looked like me, like all of the keeper's victims. Dark brown hair, tan skin, below average height. She was still breathing, ever so slightly.
"You f***ing bitch."
The keeper was staring at me from the other side of the half-dozen hanging body bags in the room. Other girls he'd abducted and forced into his horrific metamorphic cycle. His bleached blonde pigtails were sussed, beginning to fray. His eyes glowed a blinding, furious orange thanks to the contacts he'd chosen that day.
"You're disturbing them, you insufferable f***ing..."
The majority of the body bags remained motionless, but a few others had begun to writhe, the girls inside of them still clinging to life. I looked down. The girl who had fallen from the body bag I unzipped was blind, her eyes dilated and milky. Her legs were broken, stapled together like Jessa's. This was the second to the last stage, the stage where he killed us. He zipped us into body bags filled with some sort of preservative jelly and left us to die. Disturbing the cocoons would be a mercy. If I'd been on the other side, I would have wanted someone to come along and end the suffering. Knowing I had no other option, knowing that my window for survival was rapidly closing, I went to another body bag. This one was motionless. Almost too weak to stand, I clung to it. Then I grabbed the zipper and stared the keeper directly in the eyes. "I'll unzip more of them," I said, "unless you let me and the other girls with one inhumanely strong arm." The keeper planted his feet and swung the sledgehammer. It tore through the body bag I'd been clinging to, sending the dead girl inside spilling to the floor and a spray of preservative into the air. The sledge also connected with my right arm, shattering it on impact. I fell to the ground, screaming in pain, lying alongside the two girls, one dying, the other already dead. The keeper looked stunned. He was staring at my shattered arm.
"Your wing.
He choked, beginning to sob.
Your beautiful wing."
Finding a final sliver of strength, fighting past the pain, I pushed myself to my knees with my good arm. I began crawling toward the door. The keeper turned his attention to the moving body bags, shushing them, stroking the black leather, whimpering to himself and muttering unintelligibly. I reached the door. Looking to my left, I saw the stairs leading to freedom, but on my right, I heard sobbing. It was Jessa. She was lying on the ground looking up at me, Her stapled legs sprawled uselessly behind her. "Come on," I said, reaching to her with my one good arm, tears flowing down my face. Grab my hand, Jessa. Come on. Go. There was a terrible recognition in her eyes. Go. Save yourself. But this is all for nothing if you die too, Jessa said. If I know, you can still help the others. Jessa, go now! She was pointing into the room behind me, the one filled with body bag cocoons. The keeper had begun making his way toward me past the writhing masses. He was unhinged with rage. I turned from Jessa and ran left toward the stairs. When I looked over my shoulder, I saw that she'd grabbed the keeper's leg, slowing him. "You sick she said. "You're not going to hurt anymore." The keeper stomped on her head, cutting her words short. But her distraction bought me time. The keeper began sobbing at what he'd done, cursing and slapping himself in the face. I ran up the stairs and pushed past the basement door. I reached the first floor. It was a house, a normal house. It could have belonged to anyone, any regular, law-abiding citizen. It was immaculately kept, unlike the slaughterhouse basement, but there was something strange about the art on the walls. They were adorned with massive shadow boxes. Inside each box was a dead girl. Their arms were crucified, their flayed skin stretched away, pinned down, painted with elaborate butterfly patterns. Their blind, forever dilated eyes stared out blankly, their mouths agape. All of them were painted a deep violet color, accented with bright pink and white paint. The keeper's new species, nightshade butterflies. Behind me, I heard the floorboards creak. The keeper had reached the first floor. He was staring at me, his eyes orange and ablaze, two violent embers shining in the dim light of the house.
"Your wing,"
he said, looking at my mangled arm.
"Let me help you, please."
I turned and ran. I reached the front door to find that it was unlocked. I pushed past, running onto the porch, tripping down the front stairs. We were deep in a forest. The stars twinkled overhead. The bright moon illuminated a path forward through the woods. I ran as fast as I could manage. All I heard behind me was the keeper's words floating gently through the silence of the night.
"Your wing. Your beautiful wing."
My attention returned to the interrogation room. Miller, the detective assigned to my case, was staring at me with a mix of sympathy and terror. Her legal notepad had about a dozen flipped pages, each filled with notes about my story. She reached across the table and held my left hand, the one that wasn't contained in a cast in a sling. "I'm so sorry for everything you've been through," she said. "You're brave. Braver than I could ever be." I nodded to myself. It was beginning to dawn on me that people saying I was brave, it was the truth. Despite the self-hatred I felt for leaving the other girls behind. "Do you have any leads?" I asked. The detective drew a deep breath. "We're gathering more information. The trucker who picked you up gave us the mile marker, but as you said earlier, You ran for the whole night. That swath of wilderness is uncharted. But we're looking. I hate myself for leaving the other girls. I said, "What other choice did you have?" I lowered my head and began to cry. Miller let me. After a minute or so, I looked up. "Is it true?" I asked. "Is what true?" "That the keeper... that he leaves a shadow box with a butterfly in the abducted girls' rooms." Miller nodded. "Yes." She stood up, walked around the table, pulled up a chair, and held me in her arms. "You're safe now," she said. "We're putting you into witness protection for as long as it takes to find him. He can't hurt you any longer." Miller and a large, friendly, well-armed police officer drove me across town to my house to pick up some things. When we got there, I noticed that 2 other cop cars were parked outside. 3 policemen were standing on the front porch waiting for us. One of the officers helped me out of the car and walked me up to the front door. "We'll let you get your stuff," he said. "A few changes of clothes and whatever else you need. But you can send any of us back here anytime." I nodded and smiled. "Thanks." "Do you want me to come inside with you?" asked Miller, opening the front door for me. "No," I said. "I can manage. I'd like to spend a few minutes alone." "You let me know if you change your mind," she replied. "I'm right here." I walked inside, remembering the feeling of walking inside on the night I'd been abducted. Everything was untouched, just as I'd left it. I made my way to the stairs and went up to my room. When I got inside, I noticed that the officers, after examining the scene, had taken the time to close drawers and tidy up. But as I began gathering clothes and toiletries, something caught my eye. Balanced against my bedroom mirror, the same mirror in which I'd seen the keeper standing behind me, was a 6x6-inch box. A shadow box. Inside was a beautiful violet, pink, and white butterfly. It was missing its right wing, just like me. If It All Has to End, by Sam Haywood. Dedicated in memory of Tracy. May we cross paths again in our next reality.
"Hey, learn to drive, asshole."
The cyclist flips me off as he passes my car. I wave apologetically and smile. It wasn't my fault anyway. That pickup truck cut me off. Dickhead. I pump the brakes and my car slows to a stop in front of the traffic light. God damn it, seriously? I'm gonna hit every red light in town tonight, aren't I? The pickup truck speeds off ahead of me because, of course it does. I start drumming my fingers against the steering wheel impatiently. Just my stupid luck. I'm gonna be late getting home to my wife, and she's gonna wonder where I am, and she'll start to worry about me like she always does. And then, when I do eventually get home, she'll be all stressed during our birthday dinner. Yeah, that's right. Our birthday dinner. We have the same birthday, Cass and me. I don't know why people always go so apeshit when they first hear about that. We're not related or anything. We just happen to be born on the same day. It's just a cool little coincidence. Makes it a hell of a lot easier to remember, too. I give a dry laugh at that. Yeah, it's definitely convenient having only one birthday to remember. Plus, if one of us ever ends up forgetting, we'd know for a fact it wouldn't be because of any lack of interest. I look down at the clock on the dashboard. 5:15. This light better turn green soon, or I'm gonna miss closing time for that Italian takeout place Cass and I like. And then we won't get to have that awesome baked ziti we always get. But fucking hell, what kind of takeout place closes at 5? Did Cass invite anyone over for dinner tonight? The question pops into my mind out of nowhere. I frown. Why would she invite someone over? Actually, who would she have invited over? We haven't had guests for our birthday in half a decade. The only person we ever used to have over was her brother Dave, but he moved across the country to Maine 5 years ago. And he hasn't been able to fly out to see us. Which is fine, of course. I don't mind having an evening alone with Cass. I honestly prefer it, if anything. We never used to get time to ourselves like this when we first started dating. Cass and I met way back in high school during our freshman year. We were lab partners during our chemistry class. And thank God for that, because I never would have passed the class otherwise. She was one of the best students in the grade. And I, to put it lightly, wasn't the ripest banana in the bunch. But Cass didn't mind, apparently. She showed me how to do the experiments. They were, usually something stupid, like watching some chemical drip out of that big-ass tube they put in the stand and measuring the change in volume. And when we had to do our lab report, she wrote the entire thing herself and added my name on it. Was it chemistry class? Huh. That's weird. I always thought... Wait, no. It was biology class we met in. I never took chemistry. Anyway, Cass and I were lab partners in biology, and by the end of the first semester, we had gotten pretty close. And when we found out we had the same birthday, I mean, we kind of had to be best friends at that point. Because what other choice was there? Cass and I were pretty much inseparable for the next 2 years. We took all the same classes, and she helped me pass the harder ones. She talked me into joining the track team, and I got her to do chess club, which she was surprisingly good at, considering she claimed to have never played before. We had sleepovers every weekend. I'd go to her place, she'd come to mine. We'd have dinner and a movie, and we'd go to bed, huddled together on the floor of the den. And then, during the spring of 2006, in the middle of our junior year, it happened. I realized I was in love with her. It was the first time I had ever been in love with a girl. First time I had been in love with anyone, actually. At least that I know of. And I couldn't let her know. If she found out, it would... everything we had would be ruined. And I would be left there without my best friend. There was no way she liked me back. I mean, what were the chances she was even into girls? She probably liked that guy in our English class like all the other girls did. Fucking Brad. What did any of them ever see in him anyway? He was such a douchebag. Still is, honestly. He still tries hitting on me every time I go by his auto shop to get my oil changed, even though he knows I'm married and a lesbian. Yep, A 30-something-year-old dipshit who peaked in high school now spends his days genuinely thinking has a shot at nailing a lesbian. How's that for fucking sad? I'd go somewhere else, but the only other mechanic in town charges double what Brad does, and I figure getting hit on by an asshole is better than getting ripped off by one. Even if the asshole hitting on me was the biggest asshole at... What was the name of our high school? It was... Shit, what was it? Why am I having so much trouble remembering it all of a sudden? St. John? St. Jean? No, that's not right. It was... I'm broken out of my reverie by the sound of horns blaring behind me. I jolt upright and slam on the gas pedal, peeling through the light just as it turns yellow. I cringe at myself as I look in the rearview mirror and see the line of pissed-off drivers behind me stuck at yet another red light. Sorry, guys. Hope you weren't in a hurry for anything. I'm sorry, ma'am, but we don't have an order matching that name. I furrow my brow at the host. I'm completely sure I called in the order of baked ziti earlier today. Did I put it under Cass's name for some reason? Could you see if there's anything for Cass then? I ask, hoping I just had a senior moment on the way over here and forgot that I would be the one picking up. God, look at me saying senior moment. I'm fucking 34 years old. No, wait, no. 35 now. And I'm already losing my shit. Christ on a cock. The person working the register presses a few keys and looks back up with me with a frown. He shakes his head lightly. Nothing, he says. Did you want to place a to-go order? I sigh and stick my hands into my pockets. Sure, I say, trying to mask my frustration. The cashier presses another key before looking at me expectantly. I tell him what I want, and he punches it into the computer. All right, we'll have that ready shortly, he says. He motions towards the benches over by the window. You can have a seat while you wait if you like. I grunt a quick thanks and plod over to the benches, sinking down into one of the cushions. How the hell do they manage to make these things both soft and uncomfortably stiff at the same time? I remember the first time Cass and I came here together. It was right after our senior prom, our first real date. It was owned by someone different back then. DeLuca, I think his name was. No, it was Donato. Fuck, that's right. It was Tony Donato, and he was seriously the best cook I've ever known. He was one of the only people working that night. It was a family restaurant back then. And goddamn, his lasagna was just, incredible. I've never had anything like it. Then Tony died a few years back, and none of his kids wanted to take over the business, so the place was bought out by some corporate asshole. Changed the whole damn menu. They still have lasagna, of course, but it's nothing like Tony's. He took his recipe with him to the grave. The only thing worth getting here anymore is the baked ziti. Anyway, senior prom. I was in my calculus class with Cass one day, trying to seem like I was interested enough in the material that Mr. What's-His-Face wouldn't yell at me, but not enough that he would call on me to answer. Fuck, I hated that class. Ugh. Yeah, we were in the middle of learning about tangential functions or some crap like that when Cass passed me this paper crane thing she made. You know, those little origami figures people in movies are always showing off. That they probably had folded by a machine or an intern who doesn't get paid enough. And that you never think anyone does in real life. But Cass did. And she slid it over onto my desk while I had my nose buried in the textbook. It was incredible. I don't know where she learned to make things like that. Honest to God, it was so detailed that I swore I could make out individual feathers on the thing. Individual fucking feathers. It's beautiful, I whispered to her when a teacher had his back turned. She nudged my arm with her elbow. Open it, she whispered back. I couldn't help but feel bad destroying what must have taken hours of practice to make, but my guilt was replaced by confusion when I saw what was written on the paper inside. Will you go to prom with me? Was etched onto the paper in beautiful, perfect calligraphy. Honest to God, Cass, do you have to be so damn amazing all the time? Like, as friends? I asked. Cass just rolled her eyes and laughed quietly. Mr. Dickhead up at the front turned around to glare at us, and we quickly pretended to be busy working on whatever stupid problem he wanted us to be doing. No, stupid. Like, as a date, she whispered when the teacher turned back to the chalkboard. I like you. I was floored. She liked me? What the hell did that mean? Like, it had to be as friends, right? I mean, there was no way it was the same way I liked her, right? Right? Apparently it was. I caught on somewhere around the third time she kissed me during a slow song, and even then, I literally had to flat out ask her if she liked me as a girlfriend. She just laughed and kissed me again. Yeah, I know, the stereotypes, the clueless lesbian and all, but hey, it's my love story, so whatever. I can deal with being a stereotype once in a while. Was it a crane? Or was it an owl? I frowned. What the hell? Of course it was a crane. Who the fuck makes an origami owl? That's not even a thing. Then why does it feel so familiar? I don't know. I'm not sure what's happening. Ma'am? I'm snapped back to reality once again by the sound of the cashier calling over to me. I look up at him, a bit startled. He holds up a takeout bag with my name on it. Your order's ready, ma'am. I grunt as I push myself to my feet and walk over to the counter. I hand him my debit card and watch as he swipes it in the machine. He frowns. It's not going through, he says. Should I try it again? I nod. Go for it, I say. He swipes again, then looks back up at me with a pitying smile. Fuck, I hate it when people do that. It's still declining, he says, in that fake, sweet voice customer service people always do. You know the one, where they're fed up with the idiot customer but don't want to get fired for calling them a fuckwad to their face. Do you have another card you'd like to use, or... I grunt in response and rifle through my bag, trying to find the wad of cash I always keep in there for emergencies. How the fuck was my card declining? Was it something with the chip inside? Can those things expire? I know it's not my bank funds because I had over $10,000 in that account last time I checked. Didn't I? I pull out a handful of bills and flip a 20 out of the wad. The cashier rings it up and starts pulling out singles from the register. I wave him off. Keep the change, I grunt. He thanks me as I pick up the takeout bag and head back out to my car. I've got to call the bank in the morning and ask about my card. Can't do that. I freeze in my tracks. What the fuck? Why wouldn't I be able to call them tomorrow? What the hell is happening to me? I try to shake off my growing unease as I open the door to my car and get in the driver's seat. I lay the tray of baked ziti on the passenger's seat and strap myself in. I turn the keys, and the dashboard lights flicker to life. The clock reads 6 o'clock. I sigh. Just in time. Des, is that you? I hear Cass call out to me from the kitchen when I enter the house. I smirk a little as I shake my boots off over the tray by the door. Yeah, I say. Who else would it be? I put on my slippers and thump my way into the kitchen, where Cass is sitting at the table sipping on a glass of champagne. And that dress she's wearing. God, she looks incredible in that thing. Nice dress, I say. She smiles and looks down at herself, smoothing out some of the wrinkles in the fabric. Oh, thanks, hon, she says. It's the one you gave me last year, remember? I frown a bit, squinting. I don't remember giving her that dress. I've never seen that dress before in my life. Something wrong, hon? Cass's smile has a hint of concern now, and I can tell she's getting worried about me, so I try to brush it off as just another lapse in memory and forget about the whole thing. Seems like you're having a lot of those today. Whoever you are, whatever you are not ruining my special night with my wife. Got it? Yeah, I'm fine, I say. I put the takeout bag down on the counter and start peeling open the paper sides. The tray is warm, fresh out of the oven, no doubt. And I can smell the delicious aroma of mixed herbs and sauces wafting up towards my face. I pry off the lid and find lasagna. What the hell? I ordered baked ziti. Baked fucking ziti. What's going on here? Why did they give me lasagna, and why? Why does it smell like Tony's always used to? Oh, perfect, Cass says, licking her lips. You know, no matter how many times we have Tony's lasagna, I just never get tired of it. Tony, I start. But I'm interrupted by the sound of our toilet flushing down the hall. My head snaps to the side in the direction of the bathroom. What the hell is that? I ask. Cass furrows her brow at me. Dave? She says quizzically. He comes here every year for our birthday dinner. Yeah, I know he did, but that was before he... I trail off. Did he fly in for the occasion? Cass looks more concerned now. Fly out? She repeats. Where would he have flown out from? Maine? I mutter after a few seconds' pause. Did you say... Des, are you sure you're feeling all right? I didn't give her an answer. Instead, staggering my way down the hall towards the bathroom, I push past Dave without a word and stumble into the little room, shutting the door behind me as quickly as I can. What the hell is happening? I take a deep breath as I press my back against the door. Calm down, Daz. I just need to splash some cold water in my face. Yeah, that's it. Just some cold water and everything will be fine. I shuffle over to the sink and turn on the water, cupping my shaky hands underneath the faucet. I let the water pool in my hands for a second before tossing it up into my face. I take a breath and splash another handful of water onto myself. That's better. All right. I think I'm ready to... I catch a glimpse of my reflection in the mirror, and I almost scream when I see what I look like. Shoulder length, curly red hair pours down from my scalp. My hair is brown. Okay. I'm seriously starting to lose it. Like, what the fuck is happening to me? Why is this happening to me? I hear a knock at the door. Des? Cass says softly on the other side. Everything all right in there? I'm fine. I call back. But my voice is... That's not my voice. Okay. I'm seriously on the verge of tears at this point. What the hell is this? Is someone messing with me? Is this some sort of fucking prank? Are you enjoying this? I'm fine, Cass, I say shakily. Just give me a minute, okay? There's a pause on the other side before Cass gives a quiet, okay. And I hear the soft sound of her footsteps shuffling away down the hall. I sink to the floor, back against the wall. What is going on? When I finally emerge from my makeshift madhouse, Cass is sitting in the kitchen by herself. The tray of lasagna. No. It's back to being baked ziti. Is on the table in front of her, and she's got this horribly sad expression on her face. I take a seat across from her. Where's Dave? I manage weakly. Cass is silent for a minute, and I wonder if she even heard me at all. I open my mouth to speak again, but she cuts me off. I thought it would be different this time, she says quietly. Thought what would be different? I ask. She shakes her head sadly, spreading her arms out and gesturing all around her. Everything, she says. Cass, I don't know what... Just listen, she interrupts. Des, you were right. Dave did move to Maine. I shot up out of my chair. I knew it! I say, a little too enthusiastically, and Cass winces in her seat. I sit back down. Sorry, I mutter. As I was saying, she continues, Dave moved away 5 years ago. Just not this time. What do you mean, not this time? I ask. Cass, what's been going on today? Everything is so different. Cass finishes my thought for me. I know. It was like that last time, too. Last time? What I'm trying to say, Cass says. She chokes on her words a bit and has to clear her throat. Fuck. This never gets any easier. She mutters, staring down at the placemat in front of her. She takes a deep breath before continuing. What I'm trying to say is that this isn't the first time I've done this. Done? Done what, Cass? I ask. She shifts uncomfortably in her seat for a moment before looking back up at me. This isn't the first time I've lived. And this isn't the first time I'm hearing this. Cass smiles sadly at me as a single tear rolls down my cheek. How is this possible? I'm so sorry, Des. She whispers. I really thought... Cass breaks down. I can't say anything. What is there to say? I just sit there and wait for her to go on. Des, I need you to listen to me, she says suddenly. I don't know why it happens. I don't know how it happens, but I can remember every time I've lived before this. I remember every moment, every breath, every heartbreak. I remember every time it's ended, and I remember every time it's begun again afterwards. I don't. She trails off, fighting back more tears. I need you to believe me, Des, she says, looking at me with desperation in her eyes. Do you believe me? I stare blankly across the table at her for several seconds. She can't be serious right now. This has to be some sort of a prank. I mean, how could she have lived before? How could she remember living before? How could she? She's telling the truth. I nod my head slowly. I believe you, I say. She sighs softly and lowers her head, saying nothing. The only sound in the house is the gentle tick of the clock beside us on the wall. I slowly slide my hand across the table and place it over hers, feeling her flinch, but not pull away from me. When does it end? I ask, though deep down I already know the answer. She looks back up at me, and her eyes are flooded with yet unspilled tears. Tonight, she answers solemnly. Now it's my turn to stare down at the table in sullen silence. If this is really where it ends, if this is really the last night of my life, I want to spend every last second with her. I pull my hand away and sit up straight in my chair. Come on, I say. Cass looks up at me in surprised confusion. I stand up and scoot around the table until I'm standing next to her chair. I hold my hand out to her, smiling softly. If it all has to end, and this is really going to be our last night together, then I know exactly where I want to spend it. Which one is that again? Cass looks up at the sky, trying to figure out which star I'm pointing to. She squints. That real bright one up there? She says. I nod. That's Sirius, the dog star. Guess I should have paid better attention in astronomy class. I joke. I mean, not that it'll matter in a few minutes anyway. She laughs. You know, it really does matter, she says. Every second I've spent with you, Des, I really, honestly, wouldn't ever trade away those memories. Not for anything. I feel myself start to tear up, and I wipe the sleeve of my sweater across my eyes. The field is quiet tonight, peaceful even. It's just the two of us out here. The city is miles away, bustling with people going here and there. Dave is out there somewhere, maybe close, maybe off in Maine. Everyone is busy and going about their normal lives, perfectly unaware that tomorrow will never come for them. But not me. And not my wife. Hey, Cass? I say suddenly. She turns her head to look at me, black hair blowing gracefully across her face and the grass beneath her head. Yeah? Were you ever married before? I ask. In your other lives, I mean. The ones before this one. I was, she says, doing her best to nod in the awkward position she's in. My heart sinks, but I try not to let it show. Who? I ask. She blinks at me a few times in confusion. You, she says. Des, it's always been you. I've lived the same life now, 8 separate times. I've made the same choices, the same mistakes, felt the same pains and joys, all so I could get back to where I know I belong. To this moment with you. You could do anything you wanted, I say. Though I know she'll argue with me. Why would you choose the same life over and over again? Doesn't that get tiring? Cass just shrugs. Why would I want to change the story when I already know what a beautiful ending I get? I know I can't stop myself from crying now, so I don't try. I just lie there and let the tears flow freely. Cass reaches over and squeezes my hand. I love you, she says. I love you too, I say back. Promise me one thing, will you? She nods. Anything, she says quickly. Promise you'll find me again in your next life, I say. Promise me that you'll come back for me. She smiles warmly, and I see a single tear roll off of her cheek into the grass below. Always. We turn our gazes skyward again and watch as the stars above us twinkle into the sea of blackness. It really is beautiful out here in this field. That's probably why she proposed to me here. Or maybe it's because this is where it all ends. Strangely, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with it all ending tonight and doing this all again in another world. If it means I get to meet Cass for the first time again, then whatever force is doing this can't be all bad, right? Cass's watch beeps, and she glances down at her wrist. She sighs sadly and turns back to me. 1 minute left, she says. Got anything you need to get off your chest before it's over? I'm silent for a moment. There's so much I want to tell her, so much that I haven't said yet. How grateful I am to have her in my life, not just now, but every other time. How much I look forward to seeing her again when the time comes. And there's so much I don't know yet, too. A million questions flood through my mind, and I can't possibly pick one of them above all the rest, so I don't say any of it. I just laugh quietly and smile over at her. Yeah, I'll tell you tomorrow, I say. Everything starts getting brighter, and I know this is it. This is the end. I lean over to kiss her. To kiss my wife for the last time as everything fades to white. Goodbye, Cass. I'll see you again soon. The light slowly fades. And wait. I'm alive. I'm alive. But where am I? I'm not out in the field anymore. I'm not even outside. I'm in a room I've never seen before, but everything feels so familiar. Handfuls of people dressed in blue and white scrubs rush around, passing by whatever table I'm on. Am I in a hospital? Fuck, am I a baby? I try to speak, but the only sounds that come out of my underdeveloped lips is a series of gurgles. One of the doctors in the room glances over at me and smiles gently. Yup, definitely a baby. The doctor motions to one of the nurses to come take over at his station, and he moves closer to lift me up off the tray they had me on. Who the fuck puts a baby on a tray? Doctors. Apparently. But this one just took me off of one, so I guess he's not like the others. Dr. Not Like Other Girls cradles me in his arms and starts carrying me towards the door of the room. I try to speak. Try to tell him that there's been some sort of mistake, but once again, the only sound I can manage is a couple of gurgles and a soft coo. The doctor smiles warmly down at me and taps a finger to my nose gently. If he does that again, bite his fucking finger off. I'm not. Whatever. Whoever is giving me these thoughts, we're going to have a nice long chat later about what is and is not proper etiquette for the inside of my mind. Asshole. Freeloader. Fetus. Parasite. My mental argument is cut short when the doctor pushes open another door, sending a loud creak up to my infant ears. Is this seriously how loud everything is? Fuck this shit, I want out. All right, Mrs. Garcia, we have her right here for you. Garcia? Wait a minute, that's my name. Thank you, doctor, my mother says. I feel her reach up to take me from the man carrying me, and in an instant everything is warm. So this is what a mother's love feels like. Wait a second. What the fuck? Dude, are you okay? My concern for whatever time-hopping mental tapeworm is talking to me evaporates when I feel my mother's warm hand against my face. I look up at her, and she's so much younger than I remember her looking. My sweet little desire, she coos, stroking a finger down my cheek. My sweet, beautiful baby. Everything I've ever hoped for and more. Yeah, she won't always feel that way. I wish I could say something to her. I wish I could tell her that I remember her, that I love her, that I'm sorry for the way things turned out last time, but I can't speak. And it wouldn't matter anyways. She doesn't remember any of that. So I just rest my baby head against her and let myself be loved by the mother I always wished I could see again. Mom puts me down into the crib next to her hospital bed. Another tray. Go figure. And turns out the light beside her. It's late. Past midnight by this point, and she's got to be exhausted. And as I lay there in the dark, I hear soft noises coming from the other side of the room. And I realize that we weren't alone. There's another baby propped up in its crib, staring wide-eyed at me. I'm about to scowl at it, to tell it in whatever baby language we both speak to piss off. But then I get a better look at the face. And I'm overcome with relief. It's her. Cass. She knows. And more importantly, she knows that I know. I sigh, staring across the dark room at the face of the person I've come to know so well over the course of a lifetime. We found each other again, here in our next life. And we've got an entire future to look forward to. Everything is going to be okay.